Hi, welcome to Bake to the Future, the show where we examine what is happening in the baking industry with a future-focused lens. I'm Katie Jewell, and Haley is out sick today. Today, we're bringing you a quick take on the recent White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health, which happened on September 28th in Washington, D.C., and we are recording this episode on September 29th. To help us understand key takeaways for the baking industry, we have with us back on the show ABA's Lee Sanders, Senior Vice President of Government Relations and Public Affairs, and a new guest, Jula Kinnaird, President of Capital Management and Communications, a nutrition policy consultant. Welcome to the show, Jula.
Thank you, Katie.
And Lee, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Katie.
So I know all three of us listened in and participated, and ABA has done a ton of work with this conference already, and we've talked about it a little bit. So we all listened in. It was about, 8 hours of a conference. It's the first time that this particular type of conference has happened at the White House since 1969, long before any of us were at ABA, even you, Lee. And so why don't you help us, Lee, understand the context of what this conference was about. And then I want to have the quick takes as well, kind of throughout this show. We'll get to those 2 or 3 big things that we want to make sure people know coming out of it. So Lee, talk to us.
Well, this is the first time in 50 years they've had such a conference. And so why it's so important is by 2030, the administration would really like to see an end of hunger in America. And they want to increase healthy eating and physical activity by that date as well. So it was a great opportunity to bring all the stakeholders to the table, consumers that are impacted, the food industry, academia, advocacy advocates, and in a collaborative way, think about solutions and approaches that can bring transformations to the food system. And so, there were great discussions about how to eliminate hunger, to positively impact health outcomes that are achievable. And so I think that, you had such a wide variety of folks at the table. You had multiple panels. There were opportunities for feedback, and they also proactively, in advance of the conference, were seeking commitments from the wide variety of stakeholders to help push this forward.
And Jula, you also listened in on it. What were some of the things that you were listening to, and what did you take away from it?
So it's certainly the administration. This is a very ambitious goal to end hunger by 2030. I think that it's always great to have an ambitious goal. So I think it's a good thing that the administration is putting a priority and really putting some weight behind this issue. As Lee said, it brought together really the whole food community and also local government representatives. One of the panels that I listened to had a union member. The end of the conference wrapped up with 2 very appealing and just very remarkable young people who had started addressing hunger in their communities at an early age. So I think even just having this and all the work that went up to it, for instance, there were phone calls going back months before the conference where individuals had opportunities to ask questions of White House staffers and people who were going to be involved. So it's just a great way to get the conversation going and to put some real goals and benchmarks behind it.
And so does that happen now then? I'm curious. So we have this conference. What happens next? And, we can talk more about takeaways, but I'm curious. We weren't around for the conference in 1969, but do we have any grasp yet, and it's okay if we don't, as to what happens now and what we should be looking for?
Well, I mean, I think there are a couple of items that they pointed to yesterday. Certainly, they announced the new FDA healthy term definition. That proposal has come out, and comments will be due on that December 28th. They also talked about additional changes to the sodium reduction targets and the opportunity, perhaps, to look at new added sugar targets, which is something that we hadn't heard before. Um, they also were talking about a front of pack scheme, something that FDA would propose, but there's some research that needs to be done there. So I think that's going to be a great opportunity for the food industry and FDA to sit down and talk about that, because there has been a lot of work done by industry to provide front of pack information to consumers already.
And so, from like a policy standpoint, then, and excuse my ignorance, so White House has the conference, then the ideas come out. So let's say it's the front of pack, and I think that I listened to that part too, where they were talking about the green, yellow, red sort of idea of indicating if it's something you should have a lot of or not a lot of. So they say that, and then FDA says, oh, they want us to do something about that. We should really start pursuing that now. Or kind of like I'm just curious how it actually happens, some of these ideas.
Well, I think one of the things that they did talk about yesterday is for that to happen, they've got to do some consumer perception research and to see, what kind of messages resonate, what kind of messages consumers are looking for. And so that's going to be the first step. So that is a long-term project.
Okay, so that's helpful to know. And it sounds like some of these other ones that, like the sodium reduction targets, I know we've been talking about for a while. And I guess the new concept of the sugar reduction, added sugar reduction targets, I think is what I heard. That would also be.
Yeah, I also heard, from Secretary Vilsack, they were talking about a new approach to healthier choices for school meals. And so I think that, he even, I think so far as went and mentioned interventions. And so, they're looking at tools and opportunities to provide more options. So that will be interesting to see, how that works. I am also very interested, the voluntary sodium targets aren't in place yet. They will start to, they've given a window to do that. That's a very short window, 2.5 years. And I think that would be hard to achieve even if you were having a regular supply chain situation. But right now you're having a lot of disruption there. So the idea of them tinkering with that, kind of, that's what I heard, that they might be, making some changes there, would maybe cause more disruption. And so that's concerning.
And Jula, you listened in, I think, on some of the like nutrition as medicine or food as medicine sessions, or were you listening to some of that?
I didn't listen to that session. You had to pick one per group of sessions. The one I listened to talked about trying to make food more accessible and affordable. So that one focused a lot on ways to to get more grocery stores in place in underserved communities such as rural areas or more urban areas where there hasn't been an access to a real full-fledged grocery store. And then also they talked about trying to use the SNAP program, the food stamp program, to provide even greater benefit to people using the food stamps. And I believe right now there's a program in place where SNAP participants who shop at local farmers markets can double their benefits. And they talked about carrying this over to supermarkets as well. And I think that sounds good. I know Secretary Vilsack had commented on a pilot program with a grocery chain in the Midwest, where they're going to be trying to do this. And he said they would be allowing the bonus on quality foods and fruits and vegetables. And so I think we would want to know a lot more about what that definition of quality foods is going to be, how that's reached, and obviously would want to make sure that our products, bakery products, whole grain breads, crackers, that sort of thing would be considered quality foods.
And I wonder if that would kind of, maybe fall into that's where some of the healthy definition could, that would define then maybe these enhanced SNAP benefits on certain items or something like that.
It certainly could influence that. And then, the other thing that we heard, which was positive, we'd seen it before, but it was nice to hear it spoken about yesterday, was the Thrifty Food Plan, where they've injected about $20 billion into promotion of healthy choices. And for that, there's $6 billion that has been designated for grains. And so that's really positive. That's an opportunity for the industry.
Yeah, it sounds like, and I had a chance to listen to some of the research pillar. There's a whole pillar just talking about research and everything. It also seems like there's a ton of opportunities there to partner with the government to either obtain more funding or just advocate for more research in our industry.
I would agree. I mean, I think that there's opportunities when they're looking to identify gaps in the research for different demographic groups and where there may be extra, and special needs. I think that's going to be really helpful to us to participate in that process. And it's going to help inform us so that we know, what types of products are needed and what consumers are seeking.
And it also seems to me like they're seeking, as I was digging around yesterday after the conference and even on their website, showing different ideas for pilot programs, and whether they've been approved or not, I'm not sure. But it sounds to me too like they're really open to ideas either from companies or industries. Does that seem right to you?
Yeah, I do think that's right. I think, this has been, they're trying to make this a very collaborative process, and some of those commitments that they're trying to gather from folks, there appears to be like a two-tier commitment approach where you've got maybe very high level commitments from companies and organizations, and those have already been listed, on the White House website. And then also, the CDC Foundation, the White House contracted with them to do some of that outreach and to gather those commitments. And so there's another tier of commitments there. And that's actually where ABA was very engaged. And, we made a commitment to work towards refreshing our health equity toolkit. That's something that we had been a leader on, that messaging last year, and talking about the benefits and nutrient density of grains, how grain foods make a huge difference in the school meal program, and how our sector is engaged in the community, giving back through food banks and other charitable organizations. So, in talking with them, making them aware of that, and the fact that we had presented to the USDA MyPlate partners last year, there's an opportunity for us to go back and refresh that, expand our message, share that with other sectors. And so that's very exciting. We also committed to look and measure our sector's community engagement, and then encourage that and educate people as to ways that they can become, and companies, ways that they can become more active in that area.
Well, it seems like there is a lot to take away from the conference. I know that this is just the very first step of this particular, it was one day, but I think that this is just the one day that will then spur all sorts of things to come after it. We have a lot of things going on right now in the nutrition space, including the dietary guidelines and the farm bill coming up. So I know that this is a very active space right now. So absolutely, we cannot get into everything right now because it is constantly moving. Yeah, Lee.
Yeah, I have one more thing I want to add. There was a lot of talk yesterday about increasing intake of fruits and vegetables. And we know that there are actually not just two, but there are three foods that are essential to the plate: fruits, vegetables, and grains. And so I think there's an opportunity for us to also make sure that grains are included when they're talking about adding more to the plate.
I like that. So we want them to say and know and believe, because it's true, the food, that it's fruit, vegetable, and grains, not just fruits and vegetables.
That's right.
Okay, well, we'll work on that. That is something I know that we beat the drum all the time, but we'll beat even louder, won't we?
Yes.
All right, and I'm sure that too that we will stay in contact with our members with anything that they can help us with. And thank you so much for joining us on the show, for joining me on the show today.
Thanks, Katie.
Great.
Thanks,
Katie.
Jula.
And let us know what you thought of the show by emailing hello@americanbakers.org, or leave us a voicemail with any ideas or thoughts on this or anything else at baketothefuture.org. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts: Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon Music, and Ghana.